It started on a Tuesday night, one of those quiet, unremarkable evenings where nothing feels urgent and everything feels slightly off. The kind where the hum of the fluorescent kitchen light becomes noticeable, and even the fridge seems too loud. I was sitting in my garage, fiddling with my old shortwave radio setup, a mess of wires, soldered boards, and a home-rigged antenna that had once caught an old Russian number station. My personal trophy. I wasn't looking for anything special, just noise to drown out the silence. But then I heard it. A sharp click between frequencies like something snapped into place. At first, it was just static, ordinary white noise. Then the pitch changed, subtly, but enough to make me sit up. It began to pulse, rhythmically, almost like breathing. Then came the whisper. At first, I thought I was imagining it. I turned the gain down, switched headphones, adjusted the filter. Still there. Beneath the static, like it was hiding in the cracks of the transmission, a voice. Male, maybe. Hard to tell. It was fragmented, distorted, like someone underwater. I hit record. That's just what I do. Anytime something strange shows up on the dial, I document it. I learned early on that once you hear something once, chances are you won't hear it again. Not unless it wants to be found. I didn't know what I had caught yet, but I felt it. In my gut. This wasn't random. I played it back and ran the audio through my analyzer. The waveform was off. Like something was buried inside it, deeper than the human ear could pick up. I applied a spectrogram filter just for fun, and then I saw them. Faint markings, numbers, coordinates, repeated 3 times. I froze. Coordinates in a shortwave signal aren't unheard of, but the location they pointed to, less than 30 minutes from where I sat. An old forest I knew from childhood, just beyond the old logging roads. I hadn't been out there in years. No signal towers, no radio relays, nothing official. Just trees. And now this? I told myself it was probably a prank, someone with more tech and time than sense, but something about the voice kept scratching at the back of my mind. There was desperation in it, like someone trying not just to communicate but to warn. I stayed up the rest of the night listening. The signal would fade, return, shift slightly, but never fully disappear. Sometimes, in the background, I'd hear what sounded like screaming, far off, muffled. Other times, a mechanical humming, like a turbine or a massive generator. And at exactly 3:13 a.m., the signal went dead. Clean cut. No static, no fade, just silence. That silence felt louder than anything else I'd heard all night. I spent the next morning combing through the recording, cup of stale gas station coffee in hand, eyes burning from too little sleep. The static was denser than I remembered, almost like it had thickened overnight. I slowed it down, ran it through every piece of software I had. There, buried in the midtones, were brief spikes, too rhythmic to be random. When I layered the audio into a spectrogram again, the shape was unmistakable. Not just random numbers, coordinates. They repeated 3 times. At first distorted, then clearer with each cycle, like someone, was correcting the message as it played. 43:09:27 again, 73.64 W. I stared at them for a long time. The moment I plugged them into the map and saw the red pin drop just outside the town limits, my stomach dropped. I knew that place. It was an overgrown patch of forest behind the old Milburn quarry. Used to be a popular hiking trail before it was fenced off about a decade ago. Some kids had gone missing, 2, maybe 3. The stories died down quickly, but no one ever really went back after that. Too many weird tales. Dead birds, burned out electronics, whispers of radiation, even cults. Urban legends stick hard in towns like ours. But this wasn't just a story. This was a signal. And someone, or something, had gone to great lengths to encode it. The more I looked at it, the more deliberate it felt, like the transmission had been looping until someone picked it up. And now I had. I paced the garage, torn between fear and fascination. I could have let it go, chalked it up to a tech fluke or some prankster with a pirate transmitter. But I couldn't shake the tension under my skin. The kind of feeling that says something is watching you before you know you're being watched. I told myself I'd just go check it out, nothing serious, just a drive. I packed my camera, flashlight, a Geiger counter I had from an old ham radio friend, and printed maps. It felt ridiculous, like I was cosplaying as a conspiracy nut. But something deep down told me this wasn't a joke. That if I didn't go, I'd never stop thinking about it. That maybe this signal had been meant for me all along. By noon, I was behind the wheel. The coordinates entered into the GPS. As I pulled out of my driveway, the signal popped back into my radio, briefly. Just long enough for one word to cut through the static, clear and sharp. Come. I waited until after dark to drive out. I told myself it was to avoid attention. Less traffic, no hikers. But the truth was simpler. It felt wrong to go in daylight. Like whatever I was chasing didn't exist under the sun. I didn't want anyone to see me pull off the road, cut the engine, and disappear into the trees with a flashlight and a backpack. The gravel crunched under my boots as I stepped into the woods. There was no wind, but the trees creaked, as if shifting in their sleep. Every branch looked like it had teeth. Every shadow stretched a little too long. I followed the GPS on my phone until it lost signal, right as the red dot stopped moving. That's when I saw it. A clearing, just barely visible through the brush. And beyond it, a rusted chain-link fence. The sign on the gate was so weather-worn it was barely legible, but I could still make out the faded red lettering. Restricted area. U.S. government property. No trespassing. The fence had been breached long ago. Cut wires curled back like metal vines. I stepped through, heart pounding, flashlight trembling just slightly in my grip. That's when I saw it. The antenna. It was massive. Taller than I expected, with panels missing and support cables dangling loose like dead veins. At its base, there was a half-collapsed security booth. Shattered glass, a rotted chair, and a broken monitor inside. It looked like no one had been here in decades, but the air hummed. Low, steady, unnatural. Like a power source still breathed beneath the soil. And then I noticed the hatch. A round metal circle embedded in the ground, half covered in dirt and moss. No markings, no handle, just a solid, cold disk in the earth. I stepped closer, brushed off the grime with my sleeve and laid my hand against it. The metal was freezing, vibrating, like it was alive. My breath caught in my throat. I stood there for a long time, just listening. No insects, no birds, just that deep vibration under my fingertips and the soft pulse in my ears. I pulled back, trying to convince myself to leave, to go home, to forget all of it. But the signal was louder now. I didn't need my radio anymore. I could hear it inside my skull. Come closer, it said. Not with words, but with pressure. With sound that wrapped around my bones. With instinct. Curiosity pulled me toward the impossible. And so I reached for the edge of the hatch again, and began to search for a way to open it. The hatch gave way with a sudden metallic groan, the kind of sound that felt too loud for a place this quiet. It wasn't locked, just stuck, maybe from rust or time. I pried it open with a piece of rebar I found near the booth. muscles straining until it finally cracked free. The smell hit me first. Dust, rot, something faintly metallic underneath it all. A cold breath rose from the dark below, like the place had lungs. The ladder descended farther than I expected. 10 feet, 20. My flashlight barely reached the bottom. The concrete walls were damp and covered in condensation, as if the air down there hadn't moved in years. But the deeper I went, the louder the signal got. Not through the radio, but inside my skull. A low hum pressed behind my eyes, not painful, just insistent. I hit the floor with a soft thud and swung the flashlight in a slow arc. It wasn't a basement. It was a bunker. A corridor stretched ahead, lined with metal doors and rusted signs, communications, research, storage. The walls were covered in old charts, maps, redacted memos. I stepped over an upturned chair and past a broken desk, its drawers yanked out, papers scattered like leaves. Someone had left in a hurry. There were computers, real relics, IBM terminals, rotary dials, punch cards still stacked neatly on metal trays. Magnetic tape reels drooped from machines like tangled intestines. Some had been smashed. Others still blinked weakly with red indicator lights. I passed an old coffee mug fossilized with mold, a clipboard with hand-scrawled logs, the last line ending mid-sentence. The signal surged as I passed one specific doorway. My ears rang. The room beyond was a communications hub, I think. Dozens of machines, cables crisscrossing the floor, speakers mounted along the walls. I walked past a microphone still attached to its boom arm, dusty but intact. In the corner, a reel-to-reel recorder clicked softly, playing. No one had touched it, but the wheels turned. From the speakers came the same static I'd first heard in my garage. And something else. My name. I froze. It wasn't spoken exactly, more like echoed, digitally corrupted, folded into the static like a whisper underwater. But it was mine. Clear, repeated. And then, right after, a phrase. You made it. I should have run. But I stepped further in. My flashlight flickered as if responding to the words. The hum in my skull, now matching the exact rhythm pulsing through the room. The feeling that I was being watched had returned. Heavier now, like the air itself had weight. This place wasn't abandoned. It was waiting, and I had just come home. On a table beneath a cracked fluorescent light, I found a leather-bound journal with warped corners and water damage along the spine. The front page was stamped with red ink. Project Vox, classified. Inside, page after page was filled with blocky typewritten text and messy handwritten annotations in the margins. Dates, call signs, strange coordinates, some familiar from the signal I intercepted. But it wasn't until I read the introduction that my hands started to shake. It wasn't just a military outpost. It was an experiment. The purpose of Project Vox was to monitor specific electromagnetic anomalies across global shortwave frequencies. They weren't just looking for patterns. They were listening, constantly. The journal described shifts in the atmosphere, strange voice-like structures embedded deep within static, sometimes faint, sometimes clear. The team rotated in shifts to listen 24 hours a day. One of the scientists wrote that the signal didn't act like a transmission. It felt like an entity. It responded. It changed tone depending on who was listening. There was an entry that chilled me to the bone. We stopped asking what we're hearing. Now we're asking what's hearing us. Another. The voices know when we're paying attention, and they don't like it when we stop. The handwriting changed halfway through the journal. It got shakier, more desperate. Words scratched in the margins. It said my name last night. Heard something breathing through Channel 7, not interference. One entry simply read, "They're not from space, they're under us." The final page had only one line, written in frantic ink that had bled through the page. "Do not respond, do not answer back." I lowered the book slowly. My head throbbed. That low, static hum was stronger now, steady, like a pressure building in my skull. And beneath it, layered thinly, came the voice again. Faint, distant. "Jake?" At first, it was just the hum again. That low, dense tone like someone blowing across a wire under tension. But then the frequency shifted. I could feel it rather than hear it. A pressure blooming behind my eyes and curling along my spine. My fingertips tingled where they touched the metal frame of the desk. I blinked, trying to shake off the dizziness. And that's when I heard it. A voice. Not a garbled whisper this time, not buried in static. It came through clean, like it had always been speaking, but now it chose to let me hear. It said my name. Softly, intimately. "Jake." The sound wasn't external. It didn't come from the tape reels, or the radios, or any of the monitors. It came from the room itself. The concrete, the wires. From inside the walls. The light above me flickered violently and then popped with a brittle snap. For a second, I stood in complete darkness, hearing only the fading echo of my name, like it had been whispered down a long hallway. I fumbled for my flashlight, but even before I turned it on, I knew I was no longer alone down here. The moment the beam lit up the corridor, I saw it. A camera, one I hadn't noticed before, mounted above the far door. It moved, slowly, deliberately. It turned to face me. The little red LED beside the lens blinked on. I stepped back instinctively. A soft electric whine followed me, mechanical joints reactivating. Then the next camera turned. And the next. One by one, like awakening eyes, they rotated in sequence, all of them tracking me. At first, I thought it might be some old automated security loop, reactivating from a power surge. But then, I noticed something else. The cameras weren't just tracking movement. They were anticipating it. One turned before I even moved, like it knew I was going to. I whispered, "No." Suddenly, static burst through one of the speakers mounted near the ceiling, loud and sharp, like a scream made of static. I flinched, nearly dropping my flashlight. And beneath that noise, layered so faintly it was almost subliminal, I could hear breathing. Close, labored, wet. I stepped forward again just once, and another sound played. A metallic door somewhere deeper in the complex unlocked itself with a heavy clunk. I wasn't pressing buttons. I wasn't near any controls. And yet the place was reacting to me. I turned in circles, light scanning the decaying bunker walls. They looked more alive now than before, breathing, pulsing almost. The air smelled stronger now too, iron, mold, something organic. I realized I could no longer hear my own footsteps clearly, like the bunker was muffling them, or swallowing them. That low frequency, the signal, was no longer just in the air. It was inside me. My thoughts blurred at the edges, like I was losing seconds between blinks. One moment, I was standing in front of the console. The next, I was halfway down the hall. My legs moved on their own, like pulled forward. And the voice repeated again, "Jake, come back down." I hadn't told it my name. I hadn't said a word since entering the bunker. But it knew me. The journal had warned me, do not respond, do not answer back. But what if just hearing it was enough? What if listening was answering? My light flickered again. For a fraction of a second, I saw a figure at the end of the hall. Dark, still, like a silhouette burned into reality. I froze, breath caught in my chest. But when the beam steadied, the hallway was empty again. Still, the hum deepened. No longer like a signal. Now it felt like a heartbeat. And I realized the worst truth of all. I hadn't triggered anything. It had been waiting for someone like me to come back. I found the tapes stacked behind a false panel in the wall. Dust covered everything, but the labels were intact, handwritten, dated. Each bore a code name: Anders, Reina, Kovacs, Vox09. Some had the word redacted scrawled over them in a trembling hand. I picked one at random, slid it into the old reel-to-reel player, and pressed play. It began with static. Then grainy footage flickered to life. A narrow control room, dimly lit, with equipment lining every wall. A woman in fatigues sat at a desk, headphones pressed to her ears, eyes wide. Her lips moved, but there was no audio. Then, suddenly, she slammed her headset onto the table and mouthed something at the camera. I couldn't hear her, but I could read it. It knows we're listening. The video cut out for half a second and jumped ahead. Now she was crying. Behind her, a tall man, maybe Kovacs, just stood there, unmoving, staring at the wall. His reflection in the glass cabinet didn't match. It moved differently, lagging behind, twisting its head the wrong way. I switched tapes. This one was marked Vox09, final entry. The recording was darker, shakier. A male voice whispered into the mic, "We've been hearing ourselves, not echoes, replays, wrong versions, backwards." The camera panned to a monitor showing a distorted face, his own, staring directly into the lens. Then a flash. Gone. Just like that, the man vanished. No transition, no cut. He was there, and then not. The chair spun slowly where he'd been. One of the crew shouted, "Rewind that." And someone did, frame by frame, no glitch. He was just erased. I stared, breath caught in my chest. They weren't just hearing things. They were being heard back. And something behind that signal was learning them. Studying, copying, replacing. The closer I got to the source, the less I needed the equipment. The signal didn't come through the radio anymore. It hummed in the air itself, like the room was alive, vibrating with invisible strings. The voice that once crackled through static now surrounded me, pressing against my eardrums without sound. It bypassed everything: microphones, receivers, logic. Then it started speaking to me. Not just words, memories. "Remember the lake house, Jake?" The voice was soft, almost maternal. "The dog you lost when you were 6. The scar on your leg from the bike crash. Your father's last words in that hospital room." I hadn't told anyone those things. No one alive even knew some of them. My legs gave out, and I fell against a rusted locker. The voice kept talking. Not just to me, as me. It repeated my thoughts before I had them, with a delay so short it was impossible to distinguish whose mind it was anymore. Like I was being mirrored. I looked down the hallway. The lights were still flickering, but the hallway looked wrong. Angles too sharp, shadows too deep. One door had moved. I'm sure it used to be on the left side. Now it was right, and slightly open. I called out, "Who are you?" The voice laughed, my laugh. Not a copy, the same. As if someone played back a recording I never made. Then came the names. Dead ones. Alyssa, Mark, Tyler, the ones you tried to forget, the ones you left behind. Each name felt like a cold needle sliding down my spine. The air thickened. A pressure built in my chest. My heartbeat no longer felt like mine. It moved with the rhythm of the signal. I stumbled backward, but the hallway was longer than before. Much longer, no end in sight. Every few feet, the walls shimmered, like heat distortion. I saw flashes, my childhood bedroom, the funeral, my old high school gym, a woman I once loved, a place I'd never been, all blending together in a tapestry of impossible space. I realized I wasn't in the bunker anymore. Or, at least, not in the version of it that obeyed the same rules. The voice said one last thing before fading. "Come closer, Jake, I've always been inside." And suddenly, I wasn't sure who was listening to whom. The hallway led me to a sealed steel door, thicker than anything I'd seen in the bunker. Someone had welded it shut from the inside. Rust flaked off as I pried at it with a crowbar I found in a storage closet. The signal was deafening now, no longer a whisper, but a vibration inside my bones. I wasn't hearing it. I was being it. When the door finally creaked open, I stepped into the core of the facility. The room was cathedral-like, tall, dark, and humming with ancient machinery. Cables as thick as tree trunks snaked across the floor, feeding into a massive transmitter tower that pierced the ceiling and vanished upward. It looked like a spine built from chrome and wire, pulsing with blue light. Banks of analog monitors lined the walls, most cracked or flickering, displaying unreadable waveforms. One screen simply read, "Transmission active." I approached the control panel. It was covered in ash and blood. Someone had left a note taped over the master switch. Faded ink smeared at the edges. "If you're reading this, you're already inside the broadcast. Turn it off, or become part of the signal." My hands shook. My vision doubled. The air around me thickened, like syrup or smoke. Behind me, I heard the door slowly creak closed, by itself. The temperature dropped. I tried flipping the power switch, nothing. The controls rejected me. Buttons that weren't buttons, just painted illusions. Knobs that spun forever. The interface itself was wrong. Like trying to operate a machine built by something that had only read about humans. The signal changed pitch. It wasn't trying to communicate anymore. It was replicating. I heard my voice looped in fragments. Things I'd said earlier that day. Things I hadn't said out loud. Then other voices. Distorted, panicked, layered. It sounded like dozens of people, all trapped in overlapping loops. I backed away. The tower pulsed, then blinked. For a split second I saw something inside it, behind the glass casing. A shape, vaguely human, suspended like a puppet in electrical fluid. Its face was mine. No, not exactly mine. Close. Slightly wrong, like a mirror drawn from memory. Then the tower spoke. Not through speakers, through the floor, the walls, the air. A fusion of all the recorded voices, twisted into one message. One mind, many echoes joined the broadcast. I screamed. No one heard, no one could. I was already a wavelength. I yanked the main breaker down with everything I had. The hum died. The lights snapped off one by one, drowning the bunker in thick, wet silence. For the first time since I entered, the signal stopped. No whisper, no pulse in my skull, no voice crawling up my spine. Just darkness. I sat in it for what felt like hours, unsure if I was even alive. My thoughts felt sluggish, as if part of me had been unplugged too. Finally, I found my way back through the corridors, now silent and cold, up the rusted ladder and into the pale morning light. But something was wrong. The air outside was still. Too still. The sky had that wrong shade of blue, like a photograph left in the sun. The road was empty. The city skyline on the horizon looked softer, distant, like a painted backdrop. No people, no cars, just me. I stumbled back home in a daze. Every step felt like walking through molasses. My apartment door was unlocked, but I knew I'd locked it before I left. Inside, everything was as I left it, except the radio. It was on, even though I hadn't touched it, and it was playing the signal. But not just static, my voice, reading coordinates, whispering fragments of memories, calling someone else's name. I screamed at the dial, I smashed the speaker, I pulled every wire out of the wall, but I still hear it. Not from the radio, from everywhere, from me. The signal never ended, it just changed hosts. Now I wait for someone else to find it, to hear the voice, to follow the coordinates, to become the next transmission. Dead air is never really dead. It's just waiting,